The story began in an underground boxing club, where a ridiculously handsome man was busy throwing punches in the ring. His name was Yu Chen, a name that once echoed in professional boxing circuits. However, 6 years ago, his career took a nosedive after he was accused of using drugs, and he was slapped with a ban. Since then, he'd been hustling in underground boxing matches in a place called Hefang Village. The man was broke. Boxing wasn't his passion anymore, it was his compulsion. He needed money for his mother's treatment, and punching people seemed like the only skill he could monetize. Just then, a stunning beauty appeared in the crowd. She wasn't some random fan. She had traveled all the way from the city just to see Yu Chen in action. Her name was Boyan, and by the looks of her designer outfit and high heels that screamed, "I've never stepped in mud," she was definitely from money. Boyan had only one mission. No matter what, she wanted Yu Chen. After the match ended, Yu Chen was told by his boss to head upstairs to collect his prize money. He went up, saw Boyan waiting, and, assuming she was the cashier, casually asked for his cash. But when she turned around, it was as if lightning had struck his memory. She looked too familiar, like a ghost from his past wearing lip gloss. Flashback mode activated. Yu Chen had met this woman 6 years ago, and let's just say, the things he did back then could have easily given Hugh Grant a run for his money. Back in the present, he was clearly shaken, trying to figure out where on earth this woman had popped out from. Boyan, on the other hand, looked overjoyed. She had been looking for him for years, but Yu Chen wasn't even willing to look at her face, let alone offer her tea. He started accusing her of using him 6 years ago and questioned whether she had come back to fix everything with some emotional band-aid. To his surprise, she calmly said yes. That lit a fire in him. He asked her why she had returned and what she even thought of him. Without flinching, she replied with a shocking proposal. She wanted him to become her contract husband for 3 months, and there was a sweet little sign-on bonus. A cool 1 million yuan. He said the last emotional debt hadn't even been cleared, and here she was, bringing a new offer like it was some Black Friday sale. With mockery in his tone, he asked if she seriously thought she could buy him like a used car. And with that, he turned to leave. But Boyan wasn't just any spoiled city girl. She had done her homework. She knew everything about him, right down to the fact that his mom was currently hospitalized. She reminded him that the money could pay for his mother's treatment. That only made him angrier. He tossed her credit card like a dramatic hero and told her to take her filthy rich offers elsewhere. He had zero interest in her shady business deal and suggested she find someone else to play house with. Boyan, however, calmly suggested an arranged marriage. "Just say yes," she said. Yu Chen, possibly on the verge of pulling his own hair out, snapped that she clearly didn't understand words and maybe needed a checkup for her loose screws. And with that, he stormed off. But Boyan wasn't done yet. Failure had never stopped her before, and she wasn't going to let it start now. She headed straight to Yu Chen's secret boxing hideout, which also doubled as his fishing spot. Seeing her there again, Yu Chen's expression dropped, faster than a bad punch. He asked if she had seriously tracked down his house. And just as he was soaking in her unexpected arrival, 2 kids came running in. Enter Twin Kdrama. These were Boyan's children, and they were here on a mission to protect their mommy from the scary man with abs. Yu Chen, clearly not one for sugarcoating, told the kids not to worry. He wouldn't hurt their mother. Instead, he might just throw them in the river so the fish could feast. The kids looked appropriately horrified. Their possible future dad was turning out to be one spicy meatball. Yu Chen then turned to Boyan and asked what sort of circus she had started this time. She had even brought children into the mix. He asked her whose kids they were. She said it didn't matter. He just needed to be their dad. The kids nodded in agreement like they'd rehearsed it in the car. Yu Chen was baffled. He couldn't understand why she would want a broke guy like him as their father. Did she not understand the value of poverty? He jokingly wondered if he had somehow become priceless while broke. Boyan replied that it was only for 3 months, just a temporary setup, nothing permanent. Yu Chen wasn't convinced. He threw the contract away like it was a piece of junk mail and started to leave again. Boyan tried one last time to warn him that boxing was dangerous and he could die in the ring. That pushed Yu Chen over the edge. In a fit of rage, he picked her up and shoved her into his car before storming off like a hero in a 70s Hollywood film. Despite being humiliated, Boyan was still determined. She would make him her contract husband. Meanwhile, the twins proved they had more brains than both their parents combined. They showed their mother a marriage poster of Yu Chen that they had found, one he had printed at his sick mom's request. She wanted him to get married before her time was up. Boyan's eyes sparkled. Clearly, this girl was cooking up something major. In the next scene, she stood in the middle of the village and made a grand announcement, declaring that she had come after seeing the marriage ad and intended to marry Yu-chen, the village's most eligible boxer-fisherman hybrid. Hearing this, Yu-chen came running, completely flustered, and told her to get lost because he wasn't marrying her. The villagers were shocked. One woman pointed out that he had known Wan Li since childhood. Why not marry her instead? And just like that, as if summoned by drama, Wan Li showed up. She was drop-dead gorgeous and not too thrilled about this contract marriage nonsense. She asked Yu-chen if he was seriously planning to marry this outsider. Another villager chimed in, declaring that Boyan should leave the village immediately. She wasn't welcome, and her schemes wouldn't work here. Yu-chen agreed with the mob. He rejected Boyan once again, saying there was no way he was going to become the cheap dad of these jungle children. That was the last straw for Boyan. She slapped him hard and reminded him that she had already named the children, so he better talk with some respect. Then she walked away. Later, it was revealed that one of her children was gravely ill. He had leukemia and urgently needed a bone marrow transplant. Without it, the child would die. Only now did it make sense why Boyan was so desperate to marry Yu-chen. The child, though, was incredibly brave and tried to comfort his mother despite his condition. Soon after, Boyan was at the hospital. Yu-chen also showed up. He had come to visit his mom. Boyan spotted him and seized the moment. Without waiting for permission, she barged into the hospital room and introduced herself to Yu-chen's mom as a friend. Before she could spill any beans, Yu-chen dragged her out of the room. His mom, however, was delighted, thinking her son had finally found a girl. Yu-chen was furious and warned Boyan to stop following him. She didn't budge. Instead, she pleaded with him, reminding him that his mom was sick and asked him to fulfill her last wish. Why not just get married? And yes, she batted her lashes while saying it. Her beauty almost weakened him, but he once again said no. Boyan then gave him an ultimatum. He had 2 hours. After that, the contract marriage offer would expire. And here came the biggest twist of them all, that the father of Boyan's children was none other than Yu-chen himself. But she hadn't told the kids, and she hadn't told Yu-chen either. Meanwhile, Wan Li showed up again, and a confrontation between the two women erupted. Wan Li insulted Baoyan, calling her a disgusting woman with 2 illegitimate children. That was enough to provoke Baoyan, and just as she was about to slap her rival into next week, Yu-chen arrived on the scene. And just like that, in the middle of all the chaos, he agreed to become Baoyan's contract husband. Baoyan lit up like a Christmas tree and began to leave with him. But just as they started walking away, she stopped, turned around, and Baoyan didn't hold back. She gave Wan Li a solid slap. After all, anyone talking rubbish about her kids was asking for trouble. She considered her revenge well served and with full flair. Yu-chen, clearly still recovering from all the emotional whiplash, took her to his house and declared that they had to get ready to apply for a marriage certificate. Boyan was slightly confused, her brain doing somersaults. After all, her best friend Lin had warned her. What if Yu-chen never gave her a divorce? Was she planning to live with him forever as his unpaid roommate? But after a good deal of thinking, Boyan decided she would marry him, at least temporarily. They both signed a contract, and now the question lingered like a nosy auntie. Would Yu-chen actually keep his promise? Soon after, they were at the marriage bureau. Boyan was glowing like a bulb on Christmas, while Yu-chen looked like he'd accidentally swallowed a lemon. But she had officially made him her contract husband, and this was just the trailer. The full film was yet to come. Having married a good old village boy, Boyan had to shift to the village because Yu-chen wasn't budging from there. Her luggage beat her to it and had already reached the place. She decorated her new home and proudly hung their marriage photo on the wall. She was all smiles, while Yu-chen was enjoying his bachelor nap at his own house, snoring like the contract didn't include any responsibilities. The kids were now with Boyan too. She called Yu-chen and casually informed him that she had settled in the village and he better get there soon because her people would be bringing his stuff. Yu-chen, for now, was speechless. He had officially become a temporary husband on call. Yu-chen eventually arrived at her house with the kids, but the moment he walked in, he found himself in a reality show-level family drama. Wan Li's mother had transformed into a storm and was hurling accusations at Boyan. She never liked her in the first place, and now she was furious that Boyan had spent money on buying a house instead of using it for Yu-chen's mom, who was hospitalized. Yu-chen stepped up and clarified that she had bought the house with her own money. That did not go over well. Wan Li's mom now wanted to know how this unemployed woman had so much money. She insisted Yu-chen not marry her, declaring Boyan totally unfit. Yu-chen finally revealed the bombshell. He was already married to Boyan. He told everyone she was now like their daughter-in-law and deserved respect. Everyone could now go home. Buyan chimed in, warning that if anyone dared to bother them again, she'd file a police complaint. The villagers scattered like pigeons at a firecracker show. Later, Yu Chen bandaged Buyan's minor injury and agreed to stay in the house temporarily, promising to pay her back. Buyan explained she had bought the house for the children, not herself. She could have lived in a boarding house, but the kids needed a stable home. Yu Chen cautioned her about the dangers of living alone with 2 children, which froze her for a moment. A flashback showed her parents had never wanted her to have the babies, but she had gone ahead anyway. Since then, she had lived alone and taken care of them by herself. She told Yu Chen that she had been through a lot in the last 6 years and understood pain better than most. She reminded him they were just in a contract relationship and he didn't need to worry so much about her. Yu Chen admitted he was being overly involved and decided it was time to leave. It was already night. Buyan then tried to bathe the kids, but they were more slippery than logic in a conspiracy theory. They simply refused to cooperate. When Yu Chen saw this chaos, he joked that the kids were even cuter than their mother, then got suspicious for a split second, wondering if they were actually his kids. He shook that thought away like it was a bad ringtone. Just then, Buyan screamed. Yu Chen sprinted only to find that the shower head had fallen out of her hand. He scolded her for scaring him half to death. The kids were sent off to change their clothes. Yu Chen teased her, accusing her of staging the whole thing just to get his attention. She grabbed his collar and challenged him. Why was he acting scared now? That little chaos turned into a not-so-subtle romantic moment. Yu Chen accused her of trying to seduce him. She sassily reminded him that he was her husband now, even if it was on paper. Yu Chen mumbled something and walked away. Byun was clearly annoyed, but she had no choice. Winning his heart was her mission now, and she was ready to do anything for it. Life in the village had its own charm, peaceful, calm, no traffic, and no weird neighbors, unless you counted Lin, who wondered aloud whether Boyan had already given away her prime tissue to someone else. If so, what would she do now? That gave Boyan goosebumps. Honestly, it was hard to tell whether Lin was a friend or a walking anxiety attack. Buyan continued trying to woo Yu Chen, but without directly asking him for the bone marrow donation. Sadly, he was giving her less attention than people give terms and conditions before clicking agree. The next morning, Yu Chen was taking the kids to school and rushed them out the door. One of them quipped that their mom never hurried. She always said health came before school. Yu Chen muttered that if they didn't hurry, they'd end up like him, catching fish for a living. Didn't their dad ever teach them that? That hit a nerve. The kids said they had never seen their dad. Yu Chen was shocked and asked again if they'd even seen him once. The kids became sad and nodded in a negative way. Then he asked about their grandparents. The kids told him their grandmother had passed away and their grandfather didn't like them. He had never even bothered to meet them. That hit Yu Chen hard. He muttered that if he had a daughter like Boyan, he might have kicked her out too. The kids, enraged, told him not to say such things about their mom. She had been protecting them, that's why she was kicked out. Yu Chen apologized and said he didn't mean it that way. He promised never to leave them. The boy warned him not to betray them. They'd already been through too much. Yu Chen reassured them and even said he'd be like their dad. He picked them up and dashed towards school. Meanwhile, the not-so-friendly monkey gang was lurking around. They spotted the kids with Yu Chen and looked like they were plotting something sinister. In the next scene, Boyan was sleeping when her phone rang. She groggily picked it up, only to hear her children's panicked voices pleading for help. They were crying and asking her to come save them. Her worst fear had come true. The children had been kidnapped, and the people who took them were no amateurs. Poor Buyan had come to save her son's life, but now both of her children were in danger. Fear had gripped her. If she didn't pay the kidnappers 10 million yuan, they would kill the kids. Reporting to the police wasn't an option. At this point, only one person could help her, Yu Chen. So she decided to call him. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Wan Li was present while Yu Chen had stepped out of the room. Just then, his phone started ringing, but Wan Li slyly turned it off so he wouldn't get Bayan's call. Turns out the girl was only pretending to be sweet. Jealousy was practically her middle name. Yu Chen didn't particularly like her either, and now Wan Li had learned that Guanyan's children had been kidnapped. One of Yu Chen's friends had called her with the whole scoop. For a moment, she considered telling Yu Chen everything, but then decided against it and left. Back at Bayan's house, she had left in desperation. There was no contact with Yu Chen, so she decided to go meet the kidnappers herself and hand over the money to get her children back. Meanwhile, Yu Chen finally turned his phone back on and got updated by his friend. He wasn't one to sit quietly after that. He rushed out immediately. Bunyan reached the location the kidnappers had sent her. She called Lin and explained everything, even sent her location so Lin could come with the company guards for backup. With Lin was another man, Tame, who was talking to her. At the meeting point, the gangster boss demanded the money, but Bunyan insisted on seeing her children first. That's when the shocking truth came out. They hadn't actually kidnapped the kids. They had simply used AI-generated voices to fool her. The plan was to lure her in, get the money, and settle an old score with Yu Chen. Before she could react, Bunyan was captured. But just then, Yu Chen arrived, demanding they let go of his wife and not drag her into their mess. The gang leader challenged Yu Chen to a boxing match. Yu Chen agreed, but used the first opportunity to grab Bunyan and escape. Of course, the goons followed them. Bunyan had already fallen for Yu Chen, but now things had escalated. He had taken permanent residence in her heart. Yu Chen told her to leave before he got hurt protecting her. She realized he was right and ran off, repeatedly calling her friend to send help for Yu Chen. Enter Wan Li. She showed up with her own squad, clearly hoping to play Florence Nightingale and win Yu Chen's heart. She even warned Bunyan that if anything happened to him, she wouldn't spare her. Lin also arrived, but Bunyan told her not to worry about her, just save Yu Chen. As Bunyan rushed to her kids, her past came back to haunt her. Thame, her ex-lover, suddenly appeared after 5 years. Turns out he had been searching for her all this time. Hello, love triangle. Yu Chen safely made it home, with Wan Li close behind. She had technically rescued him, so he thanked her, but she was now clinging on to him. She tried tending to his wounds, but Yu Chen politely asked her to leave. Meanwhile, Bunyan returned home with the kids, who, plot twist, had never actually been kidnapped and were still at school. Thame accompanied her, clearly uncomfortable seeing his first love living in a small village. Yu Chen arrived too, lipstick on his shoulder courtesy of Wan Li, which made Bunyan a little sad. And just like that, the two men, Yu Chen, the fake husband, and Tame, the ex, faced off. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Bunyan joked that she seemed to have walked in at the wrong time. Yu Chen sarcastically agreed and said she was quite late actually. Wan Li started yapping again, this time about Bunyan and Tame's old relationship. But Yu Chen shut her down, saying this was a family matter and none of her business. Wan Li left, finally getting the hint. Tame turned to Bunyan and said he was sorry for showing up late. If he had known they'd break up, he'd never have let her go. Yu Chen lost it, grabbed his son from Tame and snapped, asking if this was her ex. Bunyan protested his behavior, asking why he took the kid like that. Yu Chen declared that he was her husband and the boy's father, so it was natural for him to take his son. Tame scoffed and asked if betrayal after marriage was also natural. Yu Chen could have knocked him out, but chose silence instead. Tame then picked up the child, refusing to give him back. He turned to Bunyan, questioning how she could call someone their father without asking the kids. Just when it looked like things would explode, the little girl suddenly spoke up and said she wanted to go to Yu Chen. That one line melted Bunyan's heart. Her child had accepted Yu Chen as her father. Yu Chen told Bunyan she had 30 seconds to handle her ex, and then he took the children inside. Bunyan told Thame that the kids had clearly chosen Yu Chen. She pointed out that Yu Chen had even protected her today. Then she went inside, leaving a heartbroken Thame behind, who now had to decide whether to walk away or keep chasing her. The kids had grown fond of their new dad. The little girl warned Yu Chen not to drink because he was injured and offered him water instead. Yu Chen agreed sweetly, causing the son to complain that he always listened to her and never to him. Yu Chen explained with a grin, "We're both men and good boys protect girls." The son loved that answer. The bond between Yu Chen and the kids was getting stronger, and Bunyan was clearly happy to see it, though Yu Chen was still a little mad at her. Bunyan teased him, saying he got caught red-handed and must be feeling guilty. If she were in his place, she'd never cheat on her partner. She added that her own people were on the way to rescue him, but Wan Li had beaten her to it. She sighed dramatically that she couldn't be the beauty who saved her beast. Yu Chen looked at her quietly. This girl was slowly making her way into his heart. But one question still puzzled him. Who was the father of those children? When Yu Chen asked her directly, Bunyan went silent. He didn't push further but teased her, saying all of this was her fault. She was just getting the consequences of her sins. He joked that he wondered which idiot she had slept with to have those kids. That did it. Bunyan started bandaging his wounds with extra force and even smacked him a bit. Yu Chen winced in pain and asked if this was her way of repaying his kindness or taking revenge. By morning, Yu Chen had woken up, but he looked lost in thought. He wanted to say something to Gwen, but couldn't. She asked him if something was on his mind. He nervously asked if she was free in the evening and said to meet him in the evening on the boat. Without explaining further, he left. Bayan stood there, confused. Bayan arrived and asked why he had called her there. Yu Chen had a lot of questions swirling in his head. He wanted to know why she married him and why she let the children stay with him. Boyan had no intention of telling the full truth. Instead, she coyly asked why he was suddenly so interested in her. He replied that he just wanted to understand what kind of woman his wife really was. Boyan smirked and reminded him not to get too happy. She was only his wife for 3 months. Wan Li was nearby and happened to catch sight of the two talking. Curious, Yu Chen again asked who the father of her children really was. Bayan, with a smirk and zero seriousness, responded by teasing him. Apparently, he had started caring about her, and maybe, just maybe, he'd fallen for her too. Poor Wan Li, upon hearing all this romance blooming, felt so jealous she nearly evaporated on the spot and stormed off. Meanwhile, Yu Chen, attempting to sound cool, claimed that only a fool would like a terrifying woman like Boyan. But it was obvious he was lying through his perfectly aligned teeth, because the truth was, he was falling for her. The only question now was how long it would take for this fake couple to become real. Yu Chen had thrown a barbecue party and invited his friends. He was being unexpectedly sweet to Boyan, and the kids seemed to adore him. When Yu Chen tried to give a barbecue steak to her son, Boyan suddenly stopped him. She explained that the child had a serious allergy. He couldn't eat it. Yu Chen blinked in disbelief and asked if someone could actually be allergic to barbecue. Boyan nodded, informing him that her son had always been allergic to fried food and barbecue since childhood. Yu Chen was stunned. The kids were twins, yet only one had the allergy? Just then, Boyan got a phone call and walked away to speak to her friend. Meanwhile, Wan Li, whose petty level had just hit new heights, offered the barbecue steak to her son, and the kid began munching like he hadn't eaten in years. When Boyan saw her son eating happily, she freaked out and yelled at Yu Chen, demanding to know what on earth he'd done. On the way back home with the kids, Yu Chen couldn't keep his mouth shut. He asked what kind of mother Boyan was. So what if the kid ate a little barbecue? He accused her of not letting the children enjoy anything. Boyan, already furious, reminded him she had told him about the allergy. Yu Chen, arms crossed and eyebrows raised, retorted that the boy looked absolutely fine to him. Boyan shot back that the symptoms weren't immediate and asked if Yu Chen would have taken responsibility if something had happened. She sounded like a lawyer grilling a witness, and Yu Chen, completely cornered, could only sulk. Now he felt like she was acting all superior because of her wealth. Bian, of course, wasn't one to stay silent. She told him flat out that he had no real connection to the kids, that he was just hired help, and she wasn't paying him out of charity. Her words hit like a frying pan, and Yu Chen shut up. Their already shaky fake relationship had started crumbling before it could even pretend to blossom. Night fell. The two fake lovers were lying on the bed, as distant as Antarctica and the Sahara. When Yu Chen finally mustered the courage to act a little romantic, the kids made their grand entry. The son, with the innocent wisdom of a child, asked his sister if the two adults were fighting. She, equally wise, responded that they were playing jujitsu. Then, like true legends, the kids decided to leave the room before things turned into a full-blown match. Boyan rushed to escort them out, clearly more comfortable with parenting than fake romance. Morning came and Boyan was still furious. The two weren't even speaking to each other. Just then, she received a call from Lin, who informed her that Buxian had fainted and been admitted to the hospital. Panic kicked in. Her son was already battling cancer, and without a second thought, she rushed to the hospital without telling Yu Chen anything. Yu Chen, still clueless, decided to follow her. At the hospital, Lin tried to comfort Boyan and informed her that the doctors were checking on her son. Suddenly, the doctor walked out and, surprise, it was Tamei. The man had recently transferred to this hospital, though it didn't take a genius to figure out why. It was obvious he was still trying to win Boyan back. Her son was stable for now, but the doctor warned that a transplant would be needed soon or his condition could worsen. Tamei requested a private word with Boyan, and Lin tactfully left. Alone with her, he confronted her about marrying Yu Chen. He figured it had to be because Yu Chen was the father of her children. Tamei accused her of hiding things and insisted she shouldn't have married someone like Yu Chen. Then he hugged her dramatically and took full blame. He promised to take care of the children from now on and begged for another chance. Clearly, the man had been watching way too many K-dramas. Just then, Yu Chen entered the scene at the perfect wrong moment. He saw the hug and caught snippets of the conversation, enough to completely misunderstand everything. Now, convinced that Boyen and Taime were rekindling something, he quietly fumed. Meanwhile, Tame wasn't backing down. He was determined to win her over. Later, when Tame went to check on her son, Bianyang noticed Yu Chen standing nearby. She immediately ran to him, not wanting him to learn about her son's illness. She tried to brush him off, but Yu Chen asked coldly if he was interrupting something and sarcastically added that Tame was the real father, wasn't he? Boyen, silently thankful he hadn't heard the whole conversation, told him to mind his own business. This only made Yu Chen angrier. He felt like she was using him, a mere tool in her personal drama. He exploded, saying that Tame had abandoned her and the kids, yet she was still clinging to him. Bion had had enough of his rant. Yu Chen, full of drama and testosterone, suddenly picked her up and dragged her off. He was furious that Buyan could be involved with someone else during their contract period, even though their relationship was supposed to be fake. But Buyan didn't love Tame, nor was she pursuing him. She told Yu Chen to just focus on the contract and fulfill it. Yu Chen, voice loaded with sarcasm, asked where the clause about a third person was written. He added that even if the relationship was fake, it was still between the two of them. Buyan, not missing a beat, replied that there was no third person and that she needed to go to the hospital now. With that, she left. Yu Chen only got angrier. He was convinced Buyan was running to meet Tame. Buyan, now deeply upset, hadn't expected this kind of behavior from Yu Chen. She had started developing feelings for him, but after all this, her respect for him had taken a hit. Ji walked away, leaving Yu Chen to stew in his own confusion. Finally, Anfang visited Yu Chen and broke the news that Buyan's son had been hospitalized. And like a lightning bolt of realization, everything clicked. He had been angry at Buyan for no reason. She had gone to the hospital for her sick son, not to see Tame. Now, Yu Chen was filled with guilt. He shouldn't have falsely accused her. If regret had a face, it would have been Yu Chen's right then. Miserable, moody, and probably craving emotional support in the form of ice cream. Yu Chen went to the hospital to meet Buyan's son and apologize, saying that the child had fallen ill because of him. He admitted he hadn't taken good care of him and felt responsible. To cheer the little one up, he gave him a toy. The child lit up with joy, just in time for Buyan to arrive, with Tame in tow. Seeing them together, Yu Chen quietly began to leave, not wanting Buyan to find out that he had come to visit her son. Watching the three of them together made Yu Chen feel a little gloomy. He still believed that Buyan was in love with Tame. Poor guy walked away looking like someone just told him his favorite noodles were discontinued. Meanwhile, Buyan figured out that Yu Chen had been there. She wondered why she was even thinking about that terrible man. The scene shifted to Buyan's father, who was quite unhappy with his son Bumen. His boxing club had been running at a loss for a year, and he wanted Buyan to return and take over. But Buyan had no intention of stepping into that ring again. Here, it was revealed that Bumen had actually known Yu Chen for quite a while. 6 years ago, Yu Chen used to fight at his father's boxing club. As Yu Chen was heading home, Bumen intercepted him. He wanted Yu Chen to participate in a championship match to help revive the struggling boxing club. Yu Chen refused outright. Bumen, not one to take no for an answer, threatened him, implying that if Yu Chen didn't agree, he would do something to his wife that would leave Yu Chen speechless. At first, Yu Chen didn't take the threat seriously. But after repeated calls from Bumen filled with menacing warnings, he realized the man could actually be dangerous. Concerned for Buyan's safety, he decided she needed to leave the village. He figured the best way to protect her was to push her away. Yu Chen wanted to talk to Buyan urgently. The next morning, when she came to meet him, he coldly told her their contract was over and he was returning all her money. He asked her to pack her bags and leave. But Buyan couldn't terminate the contract yet, not until the mission behind their fake marriage was completed. She said that it wasn't possible to end it now and warned that if he did, he'd have to pay a penalty. Yu Chen snapped and declared he couldn't continue the charade any longer. If she wanted to play games, she should go find someone else to use as a pawn. Buenan finally confessed that there was nothing between her and Tame, so technically, she wasn't violating the terms of their contract. She also had no intention of ending it, but Yu Chen wasn't in the mood to listen. He just wanted her gone because if she stayed, Buyan and her kids could get hurt. His logic was on point, but Buyan was not going to let him win that easily. She believed that if the contract ended now, her son's life would be in danger. Yu Chen and Buyan were mid-argument when Yu Chen's mother arrived, fresh out of the hospital. Obviously, they couldn't keep bickering in front of her. For now, both went quiet. The mother was charmed by Boyan and thrilled that her son had finally gotten married. She pointed out that while they had rushed into marriage, they hadn't even had a wedding ceremony. Naturally, she wanted one, and Yu Chen turned pale as flour. His mother had no idea the marriage was fake, but Boyan quickly agreed, grabbing this perfect excuse to extend the contract. Yu Chen tried to talk his mother out of it, but she was having none of it. She reassured Boyan that she would take care of everything, including her unruly son, and promised the ceremony would happen. She started planning it immediately. Boyan called Lin and told her to make all the wedding arrangements by tomorrow. Yu Chen looked like someone just told him he had to dance at his own funeral. He dragged Boyan aside, clearly annoyed, and told her that a phone call doesn't magically turn fiction into reality. He repeated that he had no intention of going through with any of it. He even tried teasing her into leaving on her own, but Boyan stood firm. She declared that once she made a decision, she didn't back down. She advised him to get ready for the ceremony. As she turned to leave, Yu Chen stopped her. He warned her that he had made up his mind. If she didn't leave, he would tie her up and send her away in a car, possibly with a bow on top. She retorted that he should get one thing straight. She wasn't going anywhere until she got what she came for. If he didn't want to see her again, then he better help her get what she wanted. Yu Chen was left thinking. He had 3 days. If Boyan didn't leave by then, things could get dangerous. He finally agreed to help her get what she needed, but only on the condition that she would leave and never return. He figured it was just a ceremony. Might as well get it over with. Boyan once again backed Yu Chen into a corner, forcing him to comply. The next day, as per Mom's wishes, the wedding ceremony was happening. Boyan's kids were also there, and Grandma was delighted to see them. Boyan looked stunning in her red dress, and Yu Chen, dressed in a suit, looked sharp. They made a perfect couple. Too bad their relationship was faker than a soap opera twist. Yu Chen wasn't even lifting Boyan's veil. The ceremony began. Yu Chen's mother gave Boyan the family bracelet, visibly happy that her son was finally settling down. Wan Li also showed up and said she had heard that Boyan had paid for the whole event. She then boldly asked Yu Chen if he had been forced into the marriage. Naturally, all the villagers started whispering. Yu Chen had to do something to silence them all. Right on cue, Yu Chen flipped the switch, turned on the charm, and transformed into the local Hugh Grant. He got romantic with Boyan, enough to convince the whole village that he was truly in love. It worked. The ceremony was successfully completed, the bride was happy, the groom was not, and their relationship was complicated. The next morning, Yu Chen told Boyan that the ceremony was done, and now she should decide when they would end the contract. Then he walked off. Boyan met with her friend Lin and explained that Yu Chen was refusing to end the contract and was even ready to pay the penalty. Lin advised that once it was over, Boyan should walk away from him and take her children with her. She asked why Boyan seemed so upset. Was it possible she had fallen in love with him? Lin reminded her that Yu Chen was not right for her and to stay away. The question lingered. Had Boyan really fallen for Yu Chen? Meanwhile, Yu Chen met with Tham Mei and asked when he and Boyan had met and why they had broken up. Tham Mei wasn't in the mood to answer any of it. Yu Chen, trying to provoke him, suggested that he must have been dumped or cheated. That worked. Tham snapped and admitted Boyan was his first love, but his parents hadn't approved. Yu Chen then asked how many girls had come into Tham's life after her and why his parents hadn't accepted her either. At this, Tham fell silent again and didn't want to elaborate. Yu Chen couldn't understand why Tham was still so obsessed with Boyan after all this time. Tham replied that if it had happened now, someone like Yu Chen wouldn't have stood a chance. From that, Yu Chen could tell how serious Tham still was. This guy wasn't going to back off anytime soon. But Yu Chen reminded him that Boyan didn't care about him anymore. She was happy with someone else, and now all Tame could do was sit back and watch the drama unfold. After hearing this, Tame completely lost his cool and punched him. Now it became clear that Tham had just passed a loyalty test he didn't even know he was taking. Yu Chen, satisfied, walked away, having confirmed Tham was trustworthy and hence suitable for Boyan. Later that night, as Boyan was heading home, a random stranger blocked her path and tried to grab her. But Boyan zapped him with an electric shocker and sent him flying. Just then, Yu Chen showed up and asked what she was doing outside so late. Boyan, visibly shaken, felt oddly at peace the moment she saw Yu Chen. She ran toward him and hugged him. Yu Chen clearly cared about her, but when he tried to hug her back, his arms stopped midway. He simply told her to let him know next time she went out. He'd pick her up. Boyan, however, replied that it wasn't necessary and that since he wanted to cancel the contract, she'd make sure not to trouble him anymore. Yu Chen then asked her to get on his bike, but she declined and walked off, while Bumen was nearby and determined to see Yu Chen follow through with the plan. Buyen, meanwhile, couldn't help but wonder why someone who was struggling financially would suddenly be ready to pay such a massive penalty. Ubuanen asked if he was in trouble and whether she was the reason behind the contract termination. Yu Chen remained silent, and Buyan, hurt, went to sleep, still unaware that he was doing it all for her protection. Yu Chen had made up his mind. Bumen was the root of the problem, and he needed to be dealt with. So, he kidnapped Bumen and drove off. Bumen panicked, assuming Yu Chen was about to beat him up like a rented drum. Right as Yu Chen was about to act, Bumen screamed, "Brother-in-law," in sheer desperation. Yu Chen was floored and asked what he meant. Bumen casually dropped the bomb that Buyen was his sister. Hearing this, Yu Chen froze. Memories of how the Bu family destroyed his career rushed back. The realization that Buyan, the girl he had a contract marriage with, was from the same family, he was too stunned to speak. Buyan's men arrived and started beating Yu Chen. At first, Yu Chen took the hits but eventually fought back. Before escaping, Bumen revealed that Buyen had been disowned by her family long ago. Yu Chen realized that until he submitted to Bumen's wishes, Buyen wouldn't be safe. He returned home injured. Buyen was shocked and asked what had happened, but he refused to explain and coldly handed her the money, along with the penalty fee, telling her to get out of his life. Devastated, Bian packed up and prepared to leave. Meanwhile, Yu Chen agreed to fight Li Zheng, a deadly boxer known for turning his opponents into hospital decoration. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to protect Boyan. Boyan, heartbroken, began to leave with her children. The boxing match began and Yu Chen was mocked by spectators who accused him of being a fraud. He wasn't even trying to win, he just took the blows. Lin informed Buyen about the fight. She rushed to her brother and confronted him, accusing him of blackmailing Yu Chen. He admitted it with zero remorse. Buyen, trying to keep up appearances, coldly claimed she didn't care what happened to Yu Chen. After all, he was just her contract husband. But Bumem laughed and revealed that Yu Chen said the same thing. Bumem then dropped another bomb, saying Yu Chen still wanted to protect her despite everything. Bumem finally understood why Yu Chen had been distancing himself. She rushed to the boxing club. Meanwhile, Yu Chen was getting battered to a pulp. Tame tried calling Buyan and lied that she was pregnant, hoping to distract her, but Buyan brushed it off. Her priority was Yu Chen now. At the boxing club, Yu Chen was barely standing, but when he saw Buyan, a surge of emotion rushed through him. He reached for her. Buyan, tearful, grabbed his hand. That silent touch said everything. Though gravely injured, Yu Chen survived. Buyan took care of his wounds and admitted that he had done too much for her. Yu Chen joked that she finally knew him. She said she once thought he was selfish, but now realized he was just a giant softie in a fighter's body. She tried to leave, but he stopped her and asked if she was worried about him. Bian leaned in and whispered that yes, she cared. She didn't want to lose him, especially after everything he had done, even knowing she was a Bu. She hugged him tight. Next morning, Yu Chen woke up to her screams and panicked, only to find her chasing a chicken that had outsmarted her and escaped mid-recipe. Turns out, she was trying to cook chicken soup to help him recover. Yu Chen cleaned her scraped finger with care. They both had something to say. Yu Chen went first. He asked her not to leave. He regretted everything and wanted her to stay. Buyan smiled and teased him. She asked, "Didn't you want me gone every day? What happened now?" She pretended to leave, and Yu Chen pulled her into a hug, finally confessing that he couldn't let her go. She playfully called him a liar and smacked his already injured arm, proving once and for all that love hurts, quite literally. But she knew the truth. She'd never find another man who loved her fiercely. Meanwhile, an online article had gone viral claiming Yu Chen was a fake boxing champion. But Yu Chen wasn't even slightly bothered by the comments. He just didn't want Buyan to feel sad thinking about his career. After lunch, Yu Chen was sitting alone by the seaside, fishing quietly. He looked noticeably upset. Being the nation's top boxer and getting called a match fixer, of course the man had reason to sulk. Meanwhile, Buyan, who was still at home, began to grow increasingly anxious. Too much time had passed, and Yu Chen still hadn't returned. Her imagination ran wild. What if he'd done something foolish? She frantically called him, only to discover that his phone was off. That was it. She dashed out of the house. Ironically, as fate loves playing hide and seek, just after Buyan left, Yu Chen returned home. But she wasn't there. Rain was pouring down and her number still wasn't reachable. He started worrying. What if Buyan had left him for good? His thoughts spiraled and he rushed out once more to find her. The two were now unknowingly searching for each other like a low-budget romantic comedy with no GPS. Yu Chen, heartbroken, even began to believe she had abandoned him. But just then, Buyan showed up. The moment he spotted her, he ran to hug her tightly, asking why her phone had been off and where she had disappeared to. Buyan explained that her phone had gotten wet in the rain and stopped working. She also asked what he had been doing at the beach. She had gone there too, but hadn't found him. Yu Chen asked if she really thought he jumped into the ocean to die, and added that if he ever did such a thing, he'd at least take a few enemies with him, because what's the point of dying alone? Buyan, touched and teary, told him he didn't have permission to die, no matter what. They hugged again, and Yu Chen decided at that moment he was never letting her go. Soon after, Buyan finally revealed to Yu Chen that she was pregnant. He was going to be a father. Yu Chen was overjoyed, and the two vowed never to leave each other. He even wanted to turn their contract marriage into a real one. Bayan felt the same, although a lingering worry troubled her. What if Yu Chen discovered the real reason she had entered his life? Would he still forgive her? Meanwhile, Bayan's stepbrother Bumen was far from pleased. He wanted her out of the company, so he could have full control. Around the same time, Buyan got a call from Tame, who demanded that she leave Yu Chen. She refused, and naturally, that didn't sit well with him. He muttered ominously that if she wouldn't leave Yu Chen, then he'd do whatever it took to make her his. He then threw away her fake pregnancy report. It landed right into Wan Li's hands, who saw this as pure gold. She wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Back at home, Yu Chen's father wasn't happy either. He wanted Bianyan to return, but her brother Bumen was ready to do anything to stop that from happening. Clearly, Buyan and Yu Chen had now gathered quite the army of enemies who would never let them live in peace. Soon, as the couple returned home, a horde of reporters surrounded them, hurling questions and accusations. Yu Chen firmly stated that Buyan had nothing to do with the scandal and asked them not to drag her in. But Buyan stepped forward, told them off, and walked away with Yu Chen, leaving the reporters stunned. Meanwhile, Bumen watched everything unfold live, looking smug. On the other side, Wan Li paid a visit to Yu Chen's mother and dropped the bomb. Buyan was Hong Fu's daughter and belonged to the notorious Bu family. Yu Chen's mother was stunned. Wan Li had played her cards right. Her goal was to drive a wedge between Yu Chen and Buyan. Given that the Bu family had once ruined her son's career, how could she now accept their daughter as her daughter-in-law? Overwhelmed by the memory, Yu Chen's mother's health began to decline. While Wan Li pretended to go get medicine, she stumbled upon the contract marriage papers. Jackpot again. With no time to waste, she uploaded the document online, creating instant chaos. Yu Chen arrived home with Buyan, only to receive a loud cinematic slap from his mother. She accused him of marrying the daughter of the very family that had destroyed him. Buyan tried to explain, but Yu Chen's mom wasn't having it. Yu Chen pleaded that Buyan knew nothing about the past and asked his mom to calm down, but she wouldn't even listen to her own son. The neighbors had also begun whispering. Buyan stepped forward and promised she truly didn't know anything. She loved Yu Chen and wanted to stay by his side. To make matters worse, the news about their contract marriage had already gone viral. Yu Chen was stuck in a web of family drama and internet scandals. His mother shouted that the Bu family was now trying to buy her son. "Don't you dare call me mom," she barked at Buyan. "You're not my daughter-in-law." Yu Chen insisted that he had signed the contract willingly and that their fake relationship had grown into genuine love. Bian was even carrying his child. But just then, his mother pulled out the pregnancy report Wan Li had found and said, Bian wasn't pregnant at all. Bayan instantly realized that Tame had lied to her. Wan Li didn't miss the opportunity and accused her of fraud. Yu Chen's mother, now truly fuming, threw Bayan out of the house. Bayan left quietly. She didn't want to upset Yu Chen's mother, who was already unwell. But as Yu Chen tried to go after her, his mother collapsed. Wan Li screamed for Yu Chen to return. His mom had fainted. And now Yu Chen stood stuck between his love and his mother, both of whom needed him the most.